So maybe I'll say it later. Good morning. Good to see you. Good morning. Good to see you, sir. I have some things here for us. I'll try to make it up later as much as I can. How about you, Jake? How you doing?
Doing good, thank you.
You made it up early in the morning?
Not so early.
Not so early. Yeah, not early. Not so early. There's different levels of early. You're saying, this is early. You say, I hear what you're saying. That's it. That's it. What do you call early? And the Yosefs, how are we going? The two Yosefs, Yossi and Yosef.
I actually missed the Sukkot this morning, but
I see, okay.
I have good intentions.
Good intentions. That's also a stage. It's important to have good intentions. And you were up at 4, 5, doing Slichot, Sfaradi. 4:30. Woo! Wow. And he's got little kids on top of it.
Wow.
But they sleep through the night, so you're okay. Oh, Baruch Hashem. Good for you. Good for you. And Yosef, where did you daven? Here in the yeshiva? Which one, the Sfaradi or the Ashkenazi? Ashkenazi. It says 7:20? 6:20, that's right. Okay, good. Rabbi Gun was there? No? Okay.
For 3 days.
3 days now? Oh, it's not a good sign. He's getting a little bit older. Hashem should give him strength. Okay. We have a few more elements of Sukkot that we want to talk about, just to finish off this survey of the first chapter. The last element really is two more elements. One is called the Jews and the nations of the world. That's 13, and section 14 is the custom of Ushpisin. So these are both prominent ideas, which they sort of both come from the idea of Sukkot that's in the Torah, but the first one clearly is the one that gets its expression in Chazal more than any others. How many? Now this is interesting. Usually, we think that when we get to the section about korbanot in the Torah, it's just a bunch of bulls and cows and sheep and goats, and it seems kind of meaningless. We don't do that anymore, and it's hard for us to understand. Maybe it's cruel to the animals, it's wasteful. There's so many questions that we have about it. But once you get over that hurdle, and there is a time and place, of course, to discuss the idea of sacrifices, and without getting into whether we're going to have sacrifices again, we cannot deny that it's a central part of the way the Torah describes our holidays, the way it describes what is Shabbat, what is different from a regular day. There's a daily sacrifice, there's a special, additional musaf, right? Special musaf. So there is a lot to be learned from the external framework of, which sacrifices were commanded when, even without getting into the meaning of what, and when we read the Sefer Vayikra, which talks about korbanot, and the most intensive in terms of number, in terms of cost, in terms of structure and progression, the series of sacrifices on Sukkot is the most of any other holiday in the year. The only competition is maybe Yom Kippur, because it's got some special elements. But the sheer number, Sukkot takes the cake, takes the sacrifice. And let's briefly sketch it out for you. We won't get into, you don't have to remember all the details of the korbanot, but we know, let's start from the basic. Every day, the Torah says, there's a daily sacrifice, right? One sheep in the morning, one sheep in the afternoon. That's it. That's why we have Shacharit and Mincha, right? There's the two basic services. They're patterned after the sacrifices in the temple. That's on a daily basis. What's different? Shabbat, once a week. On Shabbat, We don't have two sacrifices, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, but there's an additional one, Musaf, because there is a special sacrifice to be brought on Shabbat. Also, 2 sheep. An additional 2 sheep. Okay, so this is the all year round. Thank you so much. All year round, this is the basic structure. What's different is we have festivals. So what's the deal on a festival? So on a festival, also we always have the daily sacrifices. That's why it's called the daily, because it's every day, 365 days a year. The daily remains. It's called the constant sacrifice. That daily morning and evening tamid is always there. But in addition, so we have on the holidays, we have a musaf, but it's not like the musaf of Shabbat. It's not like the Shabbat of Musaf, which is another 2 sheep. It's actually 1 bull. This is already a bigger animal, right? And 1 mature goat as well. These are bigger animals than the year-old sheep. This is older than a year. These are bigger animals. And then 7 sheep. So on the first day of Pesach, we had it on the board the other time. On the last day of Pesach, on the first day of Shavuot, there's only 1 day of Shavuot, right? And also on Rosh Hashanah, all of these festival days, we have 1 bull and 1 adult goat and 7 sheep. So it shows you that this is a special day, right? It's even more special than Shabbat in that way, right? Because Shabbat, all we have is 2 sheep, right? A sheep is not as major a sacrifice as a bull. Okay?
On Shabbat, it's only 2 sheep for the whole day.
Yeah, in addition to the daily sacrifice.
It's 4 total.
4. Yeah. Right. There's other things as well, but we're going to focus on the major elements. There's libations. We talked about it briefly yesterday. That every day, together with there's a mitzvah in the Torah, it's Parshat Shlach, it says that together with your sacrifices of animals, you should bring wine and oil. It's called nisachim, libations. They're sort of like, it's like garnish. You have a sandwich, you put a little relish on top. Ketchup, mustard, what do you like in your hamburger?
Hamburger.
What do you put on top of inside your hamburger? I like onions personally, right? So you could say that the libations, they're like, in addition to for each animal sacrifice you have to bring a certain measure of wine, a certain measure of oil, etc. There's a whole other type of sacrifices called the meal offerings, which was with flour and oil, but that's a different thing. Okay, anyways, let's get back to what we were saying. So we have the daily, we have Shabbat, and then we have the festivals. Festivals is, Par ben Makar, Ay Lechad, Shiv'ach Vasim b'nei Shana, 7 sheep. That's very special. And then Yom Kippur, as I said, is extra special. It's got unique sacrifices. That was the chapter we skipped in the book about Yom Kippur, if you remember. We said that the Kohen Gadol goes into the Holy of Holies, and there's also a unique sacrifice which is called Azazel, which gets pushed off the cliff, outside the temple, very unique stuff going on Yom Kippur. But other than Yom Kippur, what happens on Sukkot? Unprecedented.
70 bulls.
Yes. Not 1 bull on each day of the festival, like the first day and the last day we said on Pesach. So you'd expect that on Sukkot, the first day should have a bull and a mature goat and 7 sheep. And on the 8th day, right, Shmini Atzeret, we saw that the Torah says that's the holiday at the end of the Sukkot. Also, you'd expect 1 bull and 1 goat and 7 sheep. So the truth is, we do find that on the 8th day. Shmini Atzeret, it's just like Shavuot, it's just like the first day of Pesach, it's just like the last day of Pesach. Shmini Atzeret, it's a holiday. It's its own holiday, and it gets the holiday sacrifices. It's pretty standardized, and it makes a lot of sense. What doesn't make sense, and what's out of the ordinary, is Sukkot. Sukkot it doesn't have one bull on the first day, and then just one musaf on the second day, one musaf on the third day. On the first day of Sukkot, I think you're supposed to bring, is it 14? 14 bulls? 14 bulls! Can you imagine? And the second day of Sukkot, we bring 13 bulls. And the third day of Sukkot, we bring 12. You can do the math. If somebody's good at math, it's a series, not the Fibonacci series. It's some kind of a... And the fourth day, we do 11. Fifth day, 10. Sixth day, 9. Seventh day, 8 bulls. And other sacrifices as well. But the main thing is just mind-blowing when we realize that the rest of the year, it's more bulls than the rest of the year combined. In one day, on the first day of Sukkot, we bring more bulls than in any other, the rest of the year. Very unique in terms of just the number and the framework, without getting into the deeper meaning. Let me just finish the presentation. And then, so the rabbis, hadn't noticed this, obviously. Everybody reads the Torah. If you read the Torah and you pay attention to the words without, getting bogged down by, what is this animal sacrifice in the holy temple? It's so weird. We should just pray and maybe give tzedakah. But this whole mode of service in the temple, it has to be understood. But this is a psukim in the Torah. Once you get over that hurdle and you actually look at the sacrifices, maybe they can actually be giving us a message. They could actually be telling us something about the nature of Sukkot, as its uniqueness. Well, of course, we've been talking. There's a sukkah that's unique. There's 4 species that's unique. But there's something else unique to Sukkot, and that is the order of the sacrifices. And how did the sages understand that? If you add 14 plus 13 plus 12 plus 11 plus 10 plus 9 plus 8, that comes to some total 70. As Jake was saying. 70 is already a very interesting number. What do you know has the number 70 in the Judaism? 70 souls what? 70 souls of Yaakov who went down to Egypt. Good. What else is 70?
70 bases of the Torah.
Good. There's a concept in the sages that there's 70 aspects or dimensions of the Torah that we are supposed to try to understand. What else?
7 days of creation.
70
Days of creation.
days of creation. I don't know. There was 7.
7.
7 days of creation. So 70 is 7 times 10. It's true. It goes back to the Shabbat. 70 is a good number because it's 10 times is of course a multiple, which means a lot. So 70 is it's like an entire cycle, like 7 days, but it's times 10. It's multiplied. What else is 70? 70 nations. There's a concept of 7 nations. Where do we get the concept of 70 nations? Tower of Babel.
7
Good.
kings.
7 what?
7 kings.
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 In Kabbalah we have.
Yeah, I don't think there's 7. I think there are. How many are there? I think there are 11. Why do you say 7? Are there 7 kings that the Torah has a list of kings that reigned in Edom before? The Torah says before there was any ever king in Israel, there was. I don't know if there's 7 there. Are there 7? Maybe you're right. I have to look it up. I can't remember.
Oh, can I be wrong?
It happens. I don't remember. You think there's 7? Okay. So 70 nations, though, actually, when we go back to Bereshit and look that up, we can also look up that when you count, I actually have a chart here somewhere. And after the break, I'm going to show you my charts about Bereshit. The first few parshot get into some genealogy and the prehistory of the world. Before Abraham, the Torah gives us names of nations, and there are actually 70 of them. If you count them all, the children of these when they came out of the ark, Noah's 3 children turned into 70 nations, and then they were scattered at the Tower of Babel. And so this concept of 70 appears a few times in our sources. So how do we put all that together, and what does that mean for Sukkot? There's these 70 bulls. Very interesting. Take a look on page 24. That's chapter 1 in the Pnei Halacha, section 13. And it's going to, we're going to put together this analysis that I just described, together with a few other verses in the Torah, in the prophets, which seem to indicate a theme on Sukkot which we have not touched upon yet. All right, who's going to start us off? Stephen, you're on the ball. Why don't you read for us, please? Sukkot is special.
Sukkot is special that the nation of the world also have a part in it. The sages say that the 70 bulls they are commanded to sacrifice during the 7 days of Sukkot correspond to the 70 nations of the world, Sukkot 55b. As we have already learned, the section 7 above, on Sukkot, it is revealed that nothing is not connected to sanity. So the positive value of the word nation is illuminated as well. The order in which the sacrifices are offered is unusual. In the first day, we offer 13 bulls. On the second day...
I was wrong. I said 14 before. It's actually 13 on the first day. I apologize. Yeah.
On the second day, 12. The numbers continue to descend each day. On the seventh day, we offer 7 bulls, 29, 12, 34. The idea is that on the inside, deep down the root of every nation in the world is good, though sometimes their action manifests terrible evil. It is therefore necessary to separate the good from the bad. By gradually decreasing the number of sacrificial bulls, the negative forces dissipate until on the 7th day we offer only 7. The number is not most suitable.
That is most suitable.
Okay. The number is most suitable for reviewing sanity in the world, which was created in 7 days, and Ayat on Shabbat 2 verse 7.
That's a commentary by Rav Kook. So it's one commentary. There's some details there that are only his interpretation. And it's not only that. It's not only the bulls, that there's 70 going down to 13 to 7, some total 70. And we mentioned that there's a universal theme on Rosh Hashanah because the whole world is judged. Also on Sukkot, we continue with that theme. And we're going to see, based on Psukim on Zechariah, there's an expectation that in the future days, all the nations of the world will come to worship in Jerusalem. Go ahead.
The prophet Zechariah teaches us that in the future, Sukkot will serve as a litmus test for the nation of the world, those who ascend to Jerusalem to worship God and to celebrate with the Jewish people will merit great blessing. As we read, all who survive all those nations that came up against Jerusalem shall make a pilgrimage year by year to bow low to the King, Lord of hosts, and to observe the festival of Sukkot. Any of the people do not make the pilgrimage to Jerusalem to bow low to the King, Lord of hosts, shall receive no rain. If the Egyptian people do not go up, the Lord will bring on them the plague He inflicted on the nation, and do not go up to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. Such shall be the punishment of Egypt and all other nations that do not come up to observe the festival of Sukkot. Zechariah 14, verse 16 to 19.
So, you never heard this before?
I've heard it before, but what's with this? I just wanted to ask a question.
It's amazing, that every year on Sukkot there's a parade through the streets of Jerusalem with people coming from, I don't know if there's 70 nations, but there's quite a few nations. There's a group from Japan that comes, there's a group that comes from Africa, there's a group from all over the world. They come and they're non-Jews, I'm talking about. Non-Jews who come, there's a gathering, a conference every year of non-Jews who come, and because they read Zechariah and they say, well, we better come. We want to get our blessing for the year. And they take the Tanakh seriously. And it's actually fascinating. It's beautiful to see. Now, it's a little bit complicated because we're scared. We've been for thousands of years in exile among the nations, And instead of them accepting us and respecting us and coming to want to pray in our temple, they've been different places and different times. We've been persecuted and singled out for anti-Semitism, sure. And so it's a real switch when they're coming to Jerusalem. And also, we lived for many years in Christian countries, and some versions of Christianity really have it as a mission to missionize us, to convert Jews. And so that's a sensitivity. Whenever we see a non-Jew, especially a Christian, saying, "Oh, I love you, I love," we love the Jews, we have a little flash star goes off in our head. Danger, danger! They're trying to convert us to Jesus and all those kind of things. So it's a good warning sign. It's a natural thing that to happen after so much history. It's in our blood. Jewish people has been suffering in so many ways, in spiritual persecution, physical persecution, but things change, and we have to also use our minds, not just our gut instincts. And sometimes people, many groups, many non-Jews, they're sincere, and they're not trying to convert us, and they're not trying to do us any evil. And they maybe some, believe it or not, we have so many Germans who come to Israel, and they want to, they feel some kind of national collective guilt, and they really, they're taught about the Holocaust, and they, just giving you one example, and some of them even convert and become Jews, let alone those who just come here to volunteer, and they want the success of the Jewish people and the Jewish country. So there's all things, but Sukkot is sort of like it's explicit verses in the Tanakh that of all the holidays in Judaism, the one which is most universal, it's actually misunderstood. Every year the President of the United States has a Seder in the White House, not because he's Jewish. One of the previous presidents had a daughter who was Jewish, and Jewish grandchildren. But that's and we almost had a Jewish vice president. But who knows? Maybe one day again. But the point is, why do they have that? Well, because Pesach celebrates freedom. Freedom. This is the great rallying call of the liberal democracies from the French Revolution through to America and the Liberty Bell, right? 1776. And so liberty and freedom, everybody connects very much to the themes of Pesach. But it's actually a misnomer. Don't have to tell them that. Don't have to push them down. Whoever wants to, celebrate with us, they're welcome to. But actually, Pesach is the birth of the Jewish people. It's a very particularistic holiday because it celebrates that we were chosen from among the nations and God took us out of Egypt. Of course, freedom is a central theme which resonates with everybody and should be promoted. But in terms of our holidays of the year, Sukkot is the holiday which is actually more universal in its themes. And we see the prophet speaks about everybody coming to Jerusalem, not on Pesach, but everybody's going to come to Jerusalem on Sukkot. Everybody has the pilgrimage to the one true God on Sukkot. And if they don't come, they won't have any rain. This connects up to the period of judgment we started with. That, of course, the new year is a period of judgment for the whole world. One of the things we're judged on, especially in an agricultural society before the rainy season, is okay, if we have rain, we're going to have what to eat. If not, we'll have famine. So everybody in the world has this concept of trepidation, some element of trepidation. There's the two sides of the coin. There's joy of, harvest and gathering in all the fruits from the previous year, but then there's trepidation about what's going to come next. What's the next crop going to bring? What's the next season? We're going into the long winter, and so this is a natural feeling in all cultures. I think human society, civilization. So in the Jewish context, we speak about the nations who are fearful, and they may be punished if they're not showing their homage to the true God. They don't come to Jerusalem to bow to Hashem. So then they won't get the rain, or they'll get afflictions of various kinds. And so Sukkot is, as you could say, an extension of this period of judgment for all the nations of the world. And Rav Melamed now goes on to bring some Kabbalistic sources. So, of course, we need a whole course on what the relationship between Judaism and other nations and other religions. But let's read it together. At least one page sort of summary. Let's see how he tries to show both sides of the coin, how really Jews have been accused, as I said, of being particulars, of being racist even. How can you say you're the chosen nation? We've talked about it a few times, but this is our relationship to the other nations. It's something that, it's a nerve which we touch on Sukkot. Okay, so who was reading? Stephen? So go ahead, our relationship.
Our relationship with non-Jews is complicated. Over the course of our long history, they have often treated us very badly. Nevertheless, our best attitude towards them is positive. The sages tell us, woe to the non-Jews who sustain laws that they are not even aware of. During temple time, the altar atoned for them. Now, what atoned for them? Sukkot 55b. Midrash make a similar point. Israel said, Master of the world, we sacrifice 70 bulls on their behalf. By right, they should love us, yet they hate us. The verse, the 109, verse 4, attests to this, stating, they repay my love with accusation, but I continue to pray. Rabbi 21, verse 24. Zohar explained in many places that we offer 70 bulls for the 70 nations out of love in order to increase abundance and blessing for them. Zohar 121, 221a, 3, 256a. Even if they had us by offering the bulls on their behalf, we ensure that they are too preoccupied with their bounty to atone us. 64a. 2187. Ultimately, though they are ingrate,
If they are
ingrate and still had us out of wickedness, the abundance they receive will become a stumbling block for them. Mishlei 25, verse 21 to 22 attests to this. If your enemy is hungry, give them bread to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. You will be heaping live coal on his head, and the Lord will reward you. Zohar 3, 259a and 24a bt. Yeah. The responsibility that we show for the entire world reveal more of Israel's special qualities. These qualities find expression on Shemini Ezra when we experience the special love between God and Israel. For this reason, we offer only one bull that, in the words of our sages, Sukkot 55b, why do we offer only a single bull on Shemini Ezra? It corresponds to a singular nation. This can be compared to a king of flesh and blood who told his servant, make me a big feast. Then on the last day of the celebration, he said to his favorite, make me a small banquet so I can enjoy your company alone.
Okay, so this is like after the concert, you got the VIPs that go backstage and they have a little party, right, with the artist, the after party with the VIPs. So that's Shmini Atzeret. That's the only one bull. This is the unique sacrifice for the Jewish people, about the Jewish people. It's our relationship with God, like every other festival. But Sukkot, it's a big party with, for the sake of all the nations, we pray for the sake of everybody. And the number 70 represents that. And of course, based on the verses in Zechariah, who the prophecy, who associates Sukkot with a time that everybody should come up to Jerusalem and recognize the God of Israel. So that's another theme that you should be aware of. And if you walk the streets of Jerusalem on Chol HaMoed, you'll see parades, and you'll understand why. I mean, there's always tourists coming to Jerusalem, but specifically on Sukkot, there's more, and they make parades based on this psukim in Zechariah. Yeah.
And this year,
Yes.
the rich people have a plantation of soya. from Brazil.
Okay.
They come, they have a cassette,
Okay.
and we go very all over the place.
Ah.
I have a friend of mine
Yeah.
that's guide them.
Okay.
It's impressive.
Nice.
How
Yeah.
much money they put behind
Okay,
this.
great. Well, send them to Machon Meir to make a donation, and by all means, I'd be happy to host them, even without that. That's nice. So you say you know a community in Brazil who comes to Israel every year on Sukkot, or this year, you're saying specifically now. You know of a case. Okay,
I don't know. what
good,
is every
good.
year, but
No, we're
this
happy for
year,
tourists to
yeah.
come. It's good for the economy. It's good. That's it. Theologically, ideologically, what do we say about? I think I showed you Shmot Yud Tet, that the mission statement to the Jewish people, right? That you're going to be for me like a kingdom of priests. We said a priest services on behalf of the rest of the community. So if the entire Jewish nation is priests, who are we priests for? We're priests for the rest of the world. And we mentioned that some Kabbalists and Rav Kook uses the metaphor from the book of the Kuzari that Israel is like the heart among the limbs of the nations. We're all part of one organism. We're all God's children, but we have a special role. And what's the heart? The heart pumps blood to the rest of the body. We need the rest of the body, and we need the rest of the body. We can't do it alone. Interesting. There's a lot more to say about the relationship between the Jews and the rest of the non-Jews, the rest of the world. But this theme is developed surrounding Sukkot based on the two things we mentioned. All right? Yes. Yeah, shoot.
Regarding the bulls the nation bring, what if they bring a blemish bull? I mean, they
So it's interesting. So any non-Jew apparently can bring a sacrifice, can donate a sacrifice to the temple. Of course, the service is done by the Kohanim, but they can pay for an animal and send it to the temple. And we know that historically this was done. Second temple period for sure. We have a story about how the temple was destroyed because of some anger when the Jewish people were fighting with themselves, and they sort of brought on some anger when one of a Roman general sent a sacrifice and it was not accepted, so he felt that this was a slight. This is a famous midrash. But non-Jews can bring sacrifices to the temple of certain kinds. Certain kinds are only for Jews, of course, but certain kinds, and the non-Jews come to the temple and they worship there, and they would sacrifice to Hashem. Don't get confused, these 70 bulls, we say that they are parallel to because this number 70, they're parallel. But these are Jewish sacrifices. The Jewish people bring those 13 and then 12 the next day and then 12 the next day from their own coffers. We pay for it. This is not a sacrifice of the nations. It's a sacrifice which perhaps, again, we're trying to understand just from the framework why God wants us to bring all these sacrifices and what they can mean. And so a classic interpretation of the special, unique sacrifices on Sukkot is of bulls, this inordinate number of bulls, is because of the universal theme of Sukkot, that we are praying on behalf not only of ourselves, usually we have, 2 sheep every day, there's festivals, 1 bull, but all of a sudden here, all the 13, 12, 11, 10, there's also another hint here, which is not as polite. Rabbi Melamed doesn't bring it so much. And he says, he does actually hint to it. He says that you notice that the number of bulls is decreasing. Right? So maybe the evil that the non-Jewish nations are doing should decrease. Their influence, their power, which is perhaps sometimes turned towards evil, that should decrease. And so there is, together with praying for the sake of the nations, it's hinted to that the influence of the nations will be decreasing as opposed to the influence of the ideals and values of Judaism. So, as I said, it's complicated. As Rabbi Melamed writes, it's a complex relationship here. So the 70 these are sacrifices that we bring, and they're not donations from non-Jews. which are kosher, but they're not done in any structured manner. Whenever a non-Jew wants to bring a sacrifice to the temple, he could, and of certain kinds. And, we would sacrifice it on his behalf. Okay? All right. Last thing in chapter 1 is Ushpizin. Ushpizin is the name of a nice movie. We mentioned it the other day about Sukkot, but it actually means guests. It's about some unique guests into the sukkah. That's what the movie is about. It's called Ushpizin because of the events happen around those guests. But what does guests have to do with Sukkot? So let's take a look. Every festival, you're supposed to be happy, but when we learned the song yesterday, is it still on the board? No. Right? ושמחת בחגך והיית אך שמח ושמחת. You remember from yesterday? חגך והיית אך שמח לילה 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 and onwards and onwards in an endless loop. Anyways, the point is, so the Torah there in the verses about joy, this is you should be joyous on the festival of Sukkot. But the continuation of the pasuk, which we don't sing, can't forget, you and the Levite and the stranger and the poor person all together. In other words, you're not going to be just celebrating by yourself. You and your family, you should have guests and take care of the people who are needy, who don't have as much bounty as you. So integral into the concept of joy on the festival is sharing that with others. And there, perhaps, is the core of this idea that on Sukkot particularly we welcome in ushpizin. That's an Aramaic word. We're going to see why we use the Aramaic as we read page 26. Okay? Hananel, you'll read for us? Thank you.
The custom of Ushpizin. As we have seen, the Torah command us to include the poor and learn in the festivities and invite them to share our meal as we read. You shall rejoice in your festival with your son and daughter, your male and females there, the Levite, the stranger, and the fatherless and the widow in your communities. These are the guests whom it is not invite into the sukkah. According to the law, it is also appropriate to invite foreigner guests into the sukkah. These are the sort of seven righteous people around Islam. Therefore, will share Moshe, Aaron, and David, whose light shine on Sukkot. On this day of the festival, the light of one of them shine brightest, and he entered the Sukkah first, accompanied by the six, by the other six. He heard on her side the more tale of the practice of Rabbi Hanna Sabah, and entering the Sukkah made him happy, so he would stand in his doorway and say, sit down, supernal guest, sit down, guest of eight, sit down. He would then joyously raise his hand and exclaim, happy is our Lord, happy is our Lord, happy is the Lord of Israel, who sit in the Sukkah. For everyone who has a share in the holy nation and the holy land is sitting in the shelter of faith and receiving the light of seven righteous visitors. He will rejoice in this world and the next. Nevertheless, one must make sure to bring joy to the poor, since the share of the seven righteous whom he invited the sukkah belonged to them. If one sit in the shelter of faith and invite supernal guests of faith, but does not give their share to the poor, these righteous guests get up to live. They are not interested by being hosted by miser.
A miser, right? Somebody who's stingy.
his deities. And the table is set for the meal is his own table, not God's table. And on him is written, I will shoot none upon your face,
Oh.
of your festival sacrifice. Who to his host when the supernal desert his table, when our patriarch Abraham, who spent his whole life standing at the crossroad inviting guests and setting the table for them. See, this person has set his table without including the poor. He gave up and announced, move away from the tent of this wicked man. All the rest of the supernal guests then fell out after him. On the way out, Yitzchak said that the belly of the wicked will be empty. And Jacob said that morsel you eat, you will vomit. The rest of the righteous say, for all the table are covered with vomit and filled without their omnipresent.
Okay, this is harsh words. Yeah, harsh words, and it's all based on the Zohar. The Zohar, Kabbalah, mystical secrets of Judaism. It adds another layer to all the themes we mentioned before. As I said, it's really adding a layer to what the Torah says. Your joy has to be inclusive, and the tradition is that there are 7 days of Sukkot. Each day is associated with one of our shepherds. They're called the 7 shepherds. 7 shepherds are the 7 leaders of Judaism. And look in the bottom paragraph on page 27. Most Sidurim include a formula for inviting the Ushpizin Ilain, the supernal guests. Traditional orders: Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David.
Weinberg?
Yes.
Supernal?
From the heavens. It's like the souls of Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov. This is the custom of Sephardim and Hasidim. In the Ashkenazi custom, the order is Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef. Makes sense. Historically, Yosef comes after Yaakov, and only afterwards Moshe, Aaron, and David. Some people make a point of having a Torah discussion each day about that day's guests. Some people who share a name with one of these people make a party in their sukkah. On the night of their supernal guests, setting out refreshments and wine for their human guests, inviting Torah scholars to speak. So this is a very interesting concept. Don't get spooked out too much. But there are different levels of living Judaism. The Kabbalists, perhaps this becomes their major theme of Sukkot every day of the holiday. One day they're talking about Avram, next day they're talking about Yitzchak. Of course, the Rabbi Menachem died on one of the days of Sukkot, and also the Gra died on one of the days of Sukkot. So the Yortzeit becomes a time, an opportunity to speak about their Torah and to connect with the themes. Each one of these 7 shepherds is connected to a specific theme. In Kabbalah, how many Sefirot are there? How many Sefirot are there in Kabbalah? There's a 10, the concept of 10 Sefirot. There's 10 elements in the creation, how God reveals himself in the world. But it's divided into 3 plus 7. Top 3, the first 3, what are they called? You guys all know this. You guys, the first 3 Sefirot, you all know.
Chabad.
That's it. This group called Chabad, it stands for Chochmah, Binah, Vadat. The first 3 of the Kabbalistic Sefirot. Those are the intellectual Sefirot. What's left is 7. The 7 more less intellectual, I guess they're more emotional and practical elements of how God reveals himself in the world. So there's one associated with each day of Sukkot. Layers and layers of meaning to each and every single day of Sukkot. By the way, we didn't mention it yet. But Sukkot is also very unique in that each day is considered to be its own festival. We say the full Hallel on each and every day of Sukkot. Unlike Pesach, which is considered to be like one holiday, and we only have one full Hallel for the entire week. On Sukkot, we have a different number of bowls in the sacrifices. That's an indication that each day is its own unique celebration. And we have a Hallel each and every day. And so you could say we've got a festival associated with, what's the midah of Avraham? Who knows what makes sense from the biblical stories about Avraham? What was he doing always? Chesed. Loving kindness. So on the first day of Sukkot, we're going to be speaking about themes associated with being giving. And of course, God's chesed to us, His loving kindness to us. The second day, Yitzchak. What's his midah? What's his attribute? He's known as the attribute of gevurah. Gevurah is might or restraint. Sometimes to give to someone, you have to also show them the rules within which to have to contain the blessings. So that's a theme of the second day, when we invite in the guest, the holy guest Yitzchak. By the way, you may not be aware, but my name is also Yitzchak. I actually have 3 names: Yitzchak, Menachem, Yosef. I use Menachem, but so I get 2 of the 7 days of I have my namesake is a special guest. So that's a lot of fun. Yeah, but we have in our home we have a little song that we do, and some people every time they eat in the sukkah, before you eat, you recite the passage, welcoming in the supernal guests. The soul of Yitzchak, the soul of Yaakov, the soul of Yosef, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David. David is the last of the Sfirot, is Malchut, King David, right? So it's appropriate that David is the last one, because the attribute of kingship, royalty, of bringing God's royalty into the world is associated with the 7th Sphira. Anyways, this is another theme on Sukkot. And of course, as Rabbi Melamed quoted, make sure that you don't make it purely religious or exclusively a religious practice, because you'll be missing out on the real poor people and the real guests that are flesh and blood that needed food to eat. So you have to, it's fine to focus on this layer of tradition, that there's a special energy that Hashem bestows upon us on each one of the days of Sukkot, but you cannot forget the social aspect of the joy is associated with spreading the joy and including other guests, real people who need, right? And so hopefully we're going to set a time and you guys will all come out to my sukkah. I'll teach you my song about the Ushpizin, and hopefully you'll be my Ushpizin, my holy guests in my sukkah. That's going to be hot. That's going to be fire. All these amazing souls getting together in the sukkah, singing. Wow, can't wait. Sat Hashem. Hashem should give us strength. Okay, so that was chapter 1. They introduced the various themes of Sukkot. Now let's get to some halacha. Next part of the shir today, we're going to get into the din nitty-gritty. We talked about so many beautiful ideas of Sukkot. 3 names. Remember the 3 names? Chag HaSukkot, Chag HaAsif, and Chag, the festival. And we said there's the agricultural cycle of the year, the historical meaning for the Jewish people in the cycle of the holidays, and the mitzvah of Arba Minim, 3 elements. Just, We can't. We don't have time now to review, but on your own time, review chapter 1, and you'll see the major elements. But let's get started on the laws of Sukkah. Okay, one thing we already mentioned, that it has to be a temporary residence. What does that mean? Practically, what does that mean? What if I have my Sukkah? I have my Sukkah from year to year. It stays there. Well, what makes it temporary then? If it's permanent, what's the definition of permanent in halacha? Is it how much time it stands? Do I have to dismantle my sukkah every year? What if I have a built-in sukkah? I built my house because I know every year I'm going to want 7 days to have a sukkah, so I built my house with a pergola. We'll see how do you make a sukkah, and how big does it have to be? What materials is it made out of? Is there a minimum height? Do you have to see the stars? This is quite an urban legend. People think you have to be able to see the stars. What if you don't? Is it still kosher? What constitutes kosher schach? All these questions which we have to talk about the structure of building the sukkah. The other day somebody mentioned that there's a mitzvah to build a sukkah. I said, not necessarily. The mitzvah is not to build it, the mitzvah is to dwell in it. Someone's got to build one if you got to dwell in it, but the way we paskin, we don't make a bracha when we're building the sukkah. We make a bracha when we sit in the sukkah. So, but anyways, you got to know what's a kosher sukkah. If you go over to your friend's house and he invites you over for a meal, and then so I'm the rabbi, I have my special glasses, my X-ray vision, and before I sit down and make a bracha, I'm going to look at the sukkah and say, is this a kosher sukkah? Just like I look at the package before, if someone gives me some food, I say, is it kosher? Sukkah's got to be kosher, because I'm going to make a bracha. How can I say God's name if it's not a kosher sukkah? I can't eat there, I can't say a bracha there. So you've got to know how to analyze what's a kosher sukkah. And then the second element of the laws of Sukkah, this mitzvah, the central mitzvah of the Sukkot, is, we touched upon it briefly, about all this stuff. We touched briefly about, what do I do in the Sukkah? How long do I have to sit there? Can I leave? We talked about eating, sleeping a little bit, right? All those parameters of what happens when it rains. Can I leave? What if the neighbor in the Sukkah snores? Important laws to figure out. So that's chapter 3, and actually chapter 4. Right? He divides up the laws of building, the structure, and what makes it kosher in chapter 3. And then chapter 4 is about dwelling in the sukkah. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I see that there's a typo in the book. In that, chapter 2 is the laws of the sukkah, and chapter 3 is dwelling in the sukkah. So that's my mistake. So those are the 2 chapters about Sukkah. We're going to try to maybe get it all done in 2 days. So we definitely won't be able to read every word.
What is the other paragraph?
Chapter 2 and chapter 3. Chapter 2 is about the laws of the Sukkah, the structure, and chapter 3 is about how to live in it, and how to sleeping in it, etc. So let's get to it. Let's get started. The laws of Sukkah. By the way, most of the Sukkot I see are kosher. But there are some details you should be aware of. If you can trust your friend's kashrut, then you can trust that he knows how to make a kosher sukkah, I hope, in most cases. There's chumrot. What are chumrot? Stringencies. There are all sorts of enhancements you can make. This is more kosher if you do it that way. But there is a bare minimum that if you do the bare minimum, the sukkah is kosher. And there's, of course, different opinions. Some rabbis are more machmir on this halacha, they're more mekel on another halacha. Machmir and mekel? Stringent, lenient. So you could say, okay, this sukkah is kosher, and the other sukkah is kosher lemehadrin. What's mahadrin? Those who are scrupulous, those who are extra special. Boker Tov, you coming in today? Great, I'll just finish up and then I'll come out. Thanks. What day is it?
Monday.
He comes Mondays? Silly me. But anyways, so it's good we didn't start yet. We're gonna have to do the laws of the Sukkah tomorrow and the next day. But you can, by all means, read ahead, chapter 2 and chapter 3. And I'm not going to bring in a sukkah, but I will bring in some pictures so that we can graphically see the different elements of the sukkah. The Seder, so we'll stop here for today. Thank you. And enjoy Yehuda.